It's so easy to be negative these days and to have a negative outlook on life and to be pessimistic. However, there's also so much positive in this world, so much good stuff in this world to take advantage of and to just look forward to. This is a reminder not only to all of you, but also to myself, because all growth springs outwards. And I hope, and it is by best wishes and intentions, that whatever I'm teaching you, well, it's going to have a positive impact. Now, while I talk about the contracts that I've put myself in and the things that I've done, because we can't ignore the certain things in this world that, we may not like. Belief doesn't matter. But there is something where belief does benefit. And it's not necessarily belief. It's paying attention to what you want to happen rather than what you don't want to happen. And that all leads to fault and responsibility. Now, while it's not your fault that any of this is happening in this life or in this world at all, it's not your fault that things are happening the way they are, but it is ultimately your responsibility. And that's a great thing. Having responsibility is great because responsibility is the ability to respond. And what better way to respond than to have the ability to respond? Sounds simple enough, right? But we live in a world where we want to avoid responsibility. Well, no, don't avoid responsibility. You should take responsibility for everything that happens in your life, because responsibility is empowering. Trying to take responsibility for what you want to take responsibility for, and not taking responsibility for what you don't want, well, you're telling the universe that you have no control over it. Well, I only have control over the good things, but I don't have control over the bad things. Well, what is control other than the ability to restrict something and to direct it in the direction that you want it to? So if you don't have control over the bad things, it means you don't have the ability to restrict the bad things from happening in your life. Because you can't take responsibility for the good and not the bad. Because for every bad, there is a good, and for every good, there is a bad. In everything in this world, there is both good and bad. Think of the weather. Here in Phoenix, Arizona, it gets pretty hot in the summertime. It can get really hot. And, there are points where the heat can be deadly, as in the heat, if you're outside too long, exposed to the heat, you can actually die. That's pretty harsh. And, there's so much bad to see in that. However, where's the good to see? Well, the good is we don't have the humidity that we have in many other parts of the world, which can lead to rust, which can lead to things falling apart more easily. I don't have to worry about, getting salt on my tires or getting salt on, the bottom of my car here in the middle of the winter. That's something to look forward to. I don't have to worry about, heavy rain or heavy snow, possibly affecting road conditions and getting me into an accident. I don't have to worry about, getting hypothermia. I also don't really have to worry about too much of my food spoiling. Food lasts a lot longer, when it's so hot and dry. And it's also a lot harder to catch, certain bugs and germs and stuff out there because it's just so hot to the point where, it just destroys viruses and bacteria as soon as they hit the air. It's just, yeah, it's that hot. The point is, you know, for every good, there's a bad. And ultimately, responsibility is great. Being responsible for life means, well, it gives you more control over life. It gives you the empowerment and acknowledges your ability, your divine authority over this life. Because, what are the principalities of air? Well, there's many, definitions of it. And, you can even say that it's an allegory that refers to something else. It's symbolic. Well, it can be symbolic of the world we live in. It can be symbolic of the conditions around us. It can be symbolic of what has not yet come to pass, what has not fully manifested in the element of earth. So that'll be about it for this one. Take care, everyone. Appreciate it. And we'll see each other soon.